Hey everyone, in today's video, I want to show you how to upload files directly to AWS S3 using Uppy. And the difference between this video and the last video will be that we will upload the files using multi-part uploads. So the idea is the files will be broken up into multiple chunks, and then those chunks will be uploaded over to AWS S3. So the process could be a little bit faster and a little bit more reliable. So if you haven't watched the previous video on this, make sure you go watch that first, where I show you how to implement Uppy with a Flask app. So in this video, we'll just cover the multi-part process because it's going to be a few steps to get it all to work, but it's pretty simple once you know how to do it. So first, let me demonstrate uploading a file. So I have this file here, it's like 260 megabytes, so it's quite large. So 261 here. I'll click upload, and then we see here in the network tools, I only have like a few things here, 3. And I'm showing you this because when I implement the multi-part stuff, we're gonna have a ton of things here. So that's going to be the main difference between the approaches. But this is quite slow because it's such a large file. I'm not gonna complete it, but if I were to upload a smaller file, we'll see that it's much faster. So this file is 13 kilobytes. I'll upload that. It gives me the URL for the file. If I go over to my bucket and refresh, we see the file here that I just uploaded. So I'm going to show you how to enable multi-part uploads using the same widget right now in this video. But before I get into that, I just want to mention that if you need help implementing this in your project, so you want to use Uppy or you want to do anything with AWS S3 or just anything with AWS and you need my help one-on-one, just check out my coaching program. Just go to prettyprinted.com/coaching, or you can click on the link in the description below where you can learn how you can talk to me in a one-on-one situation so I can help you solve any problems that you may have with your app. So now let's get into writing the code. So let's go over to VS Code, and this is the code that I wrote in the previous video, and this just allows you to upload to S3 using a regular upload, so it won't break the file into chunks. Now I need to implement something similar to allow for multi-part uploads. So the process is very similar. The difference is there's just much more that needs to be done. So the idea is I'm going to create Flask routes. I'm going to do stuff with the Boto3 client, and just as a reminder, Boto3 is the Python library that interfaces with AWS APIs. I'm going to call something on that client, and I'm going to return some data to the front end. And then on the front end, I'll define some function that will handle this for me. Uppy will call it automatically and do whatever it needs to do to enable everything to work together. So I'll need a few of these, and I'll go through all of them in the video, of course. But before I get into the functions that I need to define both in the client and the server, let me start with the function called should use multipart. So this is should use multipart. Just like that. And the idea here is it's going to take a file, and what you can do is you can return like true or false from here. So by default, should use multipart is false. So if I return true, this means it will always use multipart. And that's what I'll use in this video for example purposes, but they actually recommend doing something like this. So file size is greater than some number. So in their examples, they always use like 100 megabytes. Or 200 megabytes, so 10 times 2 to the 20th power, so that's 200 megabytes. But in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to return true, so it always uses multipart. So I'll save that, and I'll reload the page again, and I'll try uploading a file, and we'll see what happens here. Upload one file, and it immediately fails. And the reason why it fails is because I haven't set up any of the multipart stuff yet. So let's go ahead and implement that. So the first function that I want to create is one called create multipart upload. So this is going to be the function that gets called first, so we can basically tell S3 that we're going to start sending these chunks. So we need to tell S3 like, hey, a multipart file is coming. This is the first thing that needs to be done. And then the later calls will handle things like uploading the individual chunks. So let's create this function. It's called create multipart upload. This takes in a file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call fetch to my Flask app. So return fetch. It's along the same lines as this get upload parameters that I showed you in the previous video. And I'm going to call an endpoint called Uppy. And I'll prepend everything with Uppy. And then S3 multipart, right? So once I have that, I can pass some parameters to fetch, some arguments. So I want this to be method post, right? That needs to be a capital T. And then I need some headers on it. For the headers here, I'll say the content type is going to be application/JSON. So on the Flask side, I'll be handling JSON. And then the body for this is going to be something that I'll define in a moment. So body JSON.stringify. I'm going to stringify some data that I need to define. And then that completes the fetch part. And then I need to take the response. So response, and just convert it to JSON, just like this. So notice it's pretty much exactly the same style as this one where I use get upload parameters. The difference is I'm sending a post request. I need to send some data, but everything other than that is the same. So now let me create the data. I'll say, let's say let data equal, and I just want to send the type of file, because if I'm sending a PDF, I want to save it as a PDF. If I'm sending an image, I want to save it as that type of image, and so on. So I'll just send a dictionary with file.type, a dictionary that gets converted to a JSON object and then gets reconverted to a dictionary in the Flask app. So this is all the data that I'm sending. So now let's go over to Flask and let's implement that. And before I do that, what I'll do is I'll take this S3 client that I have and I'll move it and make it a global variable in this module, because I'll be using it in every one of my routes. So let's go ahead and create the new route. So this will be Uppy and then S3 multipart, just like I defined in the fetch. And this will be methods posts, because it's sending a post request that I put here. And then I'll just give this a name. Let's call this Uppy S3 multipart. And the first thing I want to do is I want to get that data that I'm sending over. So I'll do data equals request.get JSON. And then I just want to get the content type from that data. So I'll say content type equals data type. So I'm getting the one thing out of the data that I put in there on the front end. And then I need to send a request over to S3 using the Boto3 API. So I'll call this response. And this is going to use the S3 client. And then I want to call the create multipart upload method. And then I need to pass in some information. So I want to pass in the bucket. So the name of the bucket is one more test bucket, just like here. So one more test bucket. The key is going to be, let's call this multipart uppy file.pdf. And then the content type is going to be equal to the content type variable that I have here. And then that's it. So this will create the multipart upload in S3, and then I need to return something. So I'm going to return some data as JSON. So two things here. The upload ID gets returned by this call create multipart upload, and I need to give Uppy that. So I'll use response and then upload ID. So capital U, capital I, lowercase d there. And then for the key, I'll do response key, which will just be the key that I put in there. So that's it. Let's see, there's an error here. I just forgot a comma. So now let's see if this works. The entire process won't work, but it should at least try to create it. So I'll upload one file. And we see here on the network, it's calling S3 multipart. It's getting a response to this multipart uppy file.pdf, and it has this upload ID. We see the entire thing failed though, because I still need to implement more functions and more routes. So now that we have this one, let's go back to the JavaScript and implement the next function. So I'll put a comma here, and the name of this function is going to be list parts. So lowercase l, capital P. And this one takes a file, and then it's also going to take in some extra data. So the upload ID and the key, right? So it's going to pass an object, but I just want the upload ID and the key out of there. So I'm writing it like this, and let me do a line break there. So once again, I'm going to follow the same pattern. And because the pattern is so similar, I'm just going to copy and paste and then update the things that need to be changed just to save on typing. So the data in this case is, instead of having type, I want to have the key. So I'm just going to do key like this. So I can pass this key over to the Flask app. And then what I want to do is I want to fetch multipart, but this time I'm going to put an argument on it. So I'll make this a string where I can put variables in there. And then I'll put the upload ID. So upload ID right there. It's still going to use method post. It's still going to be application JSON, and it's still going to stringify the data for the body. And then it's still going to convert the response to JSON. So list parts is done here on the front end. So now I need to do the same thing on the back end. So now app routes, this will be Uppy /S3 multipart. And then this one takes in an upload ID. So upload ID. And then the methods will, of course, be post. So everything will be post for this multipart stuff. And then I'll call this, let's say, get Uppy S3 multi. And it takes in the upload ID because it's here. I forgot the other angle bracket, but it takes in the upload ID. And once again, I'll do request.getJSON to get the data. And really, I don't need to have a separate line for this. So I'll just put it inside of the call. So response is equal to S3 client. And what I'm calling here is list parts. So the Boto 3 API has what I need. I'm calling list parts, and I just need to pass in the bucket. So one more test bucket. I need to pass in the upload ID. So the upload ID here, and then the key. So the key is inside of data. So data key, just like that. And all I need to return here are the parts. So I can return response parts just like this. And then Uppy will know what to do with the parts here. So it's kind of hard to test this part. So I'll just continue with the other functions that I need to implement, and then I'll test everything at the end. There are 3 more functions that need to be done. But like I said, on the front end, they're all very similar. So the next one is going to be called sign part. This one takes in a file and some part data. So this tells AWS S3 that you have permissions to upload each individual part of the overall file. And let me just go ahead and copy this one and put it in here. So once again, I want the key. This time the key is going to be partData.key, partData.key. And then the upload ID will be partData.upload ID. So I could do it in this style, but just to show you a different approach, we have partData.key and partData.upload ID instead of putting the upload ID and key in there. And then there's one more thing that we need, and that's called the part number. So after the upload ID, I'll do another slash, and I'll do partData.part number, and then everything else will be similar. So I'm sending a post request. It's JSON stringifying the data, which is just the key, and then returning the response. So now let's go back over to the Flask app and implement this. So app routes, and I'll just copy this because it's very similar. I just need to add the part number. This will be an integer. So I'll put int colon and then part number. And then I'll call this, let's say, get Uppy S3 multi-part. How about that? And then this takes in an upload ID and a part number. Okay. So once again, we start by getting the data from the request. So request.getJSON. And then we need to send the request over to S3. So this one will generate a URL. So I'll use URL. And this is actually pretty similar to what I did here in the last video where I generate a pre-signed URL. So S3 client, generate pre-signed URL. And I want to pass upload part for this one. So in the first one, what I had to pass was put object. But for this particular URL, it's going to be upload part URL. And then I can pass some params. So I'll put this on a second line. I will say params equals, and then bucket, one more test bucket, the key, and I can put this on multiple lines as well, just to make it look a little bit better. So the key is going to be a data key. We have the upload ID. So upload ID, lowercase d. This will be the upload ID that I get from the URL here. And then we have the part number, which will be the part number, which also comes from the URL. So let me de-indent that. And then we need an expires in. So let's say expires in 1 hour, so 3,600 seconds. So this will create the URL, and then we just need to return that. So return URL, and then the actual URL. Okay, so now that we have that, we need to implement a function for aborting the multipart upload. So let's go ahead and create that. This is going to be abort multipart upload. So capital M, capital U, takes in a file. And once again, I can do like part data or the trick here with the object to get the values out of the object or the keys out of the object. So let's say upload ID here and key. It's a little bit shorter, so I'll just do it this way. And then I'll copy and paste the previous one because once again, it's pretty similar. So I need to pass the key. So this time it's just key, not part data, but you could make it part data if you like. I want to send a request to the upload ID. So this time it doesn't have a part number because this is aborting the entire multipart upload. So we just need the upload ID. Instead of post, I want to send a delete request, and then everything else remains the same. So let's go over to the app and implement that. So this route will be Uppy S3 multipart / upload ID. And the methods in this case will be delete instead of post. And then I'll call this function delete Uppy S3 multi. And of course it takes in the upload ID here. And I need the data equals request.getJSON. And then I need to call abort multipart upload using the Boto3 API. The bucket is going to be one more test bucket. The key is going to be data key. And finally, the upload ID will be upload ID. And this doesn't need to return anything, so I'll return an empty dictionary. And I see I have an error here, line 50. So I think I forgot a comma somewhere. So params, yeah, I just forgot a comma right here. So now that works, everything is fine. So this is pretty simple. This is the simplest one so far. It just sends a request to abort multipart upload using the key, and then it basically just removes it from S3 because you're telling it that you're not going to actually upload that file. Like something went wrong or the user canceled. So just go ahead and delete everything. So there's one more I need to implement, and this one is to finish everything. So basically all the parts have been uploaded to S3, and then you tell S3 that everything is uploaded, everything is done, so it can take everything and reconstruct the file and then save the file in the bucket. So this one is called complete multipart upload, and this takes a file, and then we can get the upload ID, the key, and the parts. And then once again, I'll just copy and paste because it's very similar. So this one, I want to pass the key and I want to pass the parts. So just like that, key and parts. I want to send a request to the upload ID, but then /complete on the end. So I'll define that. I'll make this a post again, and everything will be the same. And I think because I'm done here, what I'll do is I'll change this one. I just want everything to be consistent. So I need the key, the upload ID, and the part number here. And then I'll just remove part data from here, just so everything is consistent. So if you go on GitHub and get this code, everything is consistent for you. So it all makes sense. So let's just do that. And now I can go back over to the Flask app for the final time, assuming there are no errors, and define this route. So this will be Uppy S3 multipart upload ID /complete. The methods on this will be posts, and then I'll say Uppy S3 multi complete as the name of the function, and it takes in an upload ID. Once again, I start by getting the data from the JSON, so request.getJSON. And then I need to send a request to S3. So this will be response equals S3 client. The name of the method is complete multipart upload. And this one takes in a bucket. So one more test bucket. Hopefully I spelled that correct everywhere. Let me just highlight it. Yeah, one more test bucket is everywhere. So yeah, that's the name of the bucket. The key is going to be data key. upload ID is going to be upload ID. And then for this one, there's a special parameter called multipart upload. So capital M, capital U. Takes in a dictionary with parts. And then I have the parts inside of the JSON object. So data parts, just like that. And what I need to return is the location. So location like that. And then response, location, and then Uppy will know what to do with that. So that should be all the code unless there are any issues, and we'll deal with the issues if they come up. But as you see, the process for doing this is the same for basically every endpoint. I had to define 5 endpoints to get this to work. And if you were to look at the docs for this, like if you look down here, they're basically telling you the endpoints that you have to define. So here I defined S3 in the previous video, but these 5 multi-part ones, I've created them in this video. So you need these to get the multi-part upload to work. And the docs here, they don't tell you anything about how to get this to work in Flask. So that's the whole reason why I'm creating this video. But as you can see, they give you the information that you need for each one of these functions that you have to define in your Uppy configuration. And then Uppy will take these functions, call them when necessary to do the multi-part upload. So now let's go ahead and see if everything works. My server's running. I have my code saved. Should use multipart as true, so it's always going to work. So let's go ahead and see if this works. I'll refresh the page. I have the network tools open here, so notice there are only 3 things here. And I'll go ahead and upload this file again. That is 261 megabytes. And let's see if it works. So upload one file. And now we see here we have all of these calls on the network because it's splitting up the file into chunks and uploading each chunk individually. So it can upload like 6 chunks at a time by default. You can change this number, but I just left it as a default. But we see here is doing a lot of work. Like right now it's over 100 requests to upload this one file because it's such a large file. And by the time it finishes, it might even get to 200. Well, doesn't look like it, maybe like 170, 180. Okay, so we see it actually upload everything and then it got to upload failed. So that means there's an error somewhere. So let's look at the results. So we see part data here isn't defined on line 50. So that was the thing I changed without fixing everything. So let's go over here and let's see if part data exists anywhere. Yeah, so here I have part data, but this should just be upload ID. I think that was a copy and paste fail. And then this one, I still have part data. So let me just go ahead and remove that. So any other instances of part data, I don't see it. Part data. Yeah. So this should be fine now. But we saw that it did most of the work. So you see all of these requests coming into Flask and they were all fine. So now let's go back over here, refresh. If we go here, in the bucket, we see it didn't actually upload the file because it couldn't complete it, right? So I'll just do this one more time. I'll upload and then I'll just fast forward until the end when it gets to 100%. Okay, so we see it completed. It alerted the URL. We have the green complete. If we go back to the bucket and refresh, we see that the file has been uploaded properly, 260 megabytes. I can go ahead and open that. It's a manual from the FAA on airplanes, so it's quite large. So yeah, it's taking a while to download here because it's 260 megabytes. But you'll see that it has like a picture of an airplane or something when it finally loads. So that's it. That's the process for doing multi-part uploads directly to S3 with Uppy. So like I said in the previous video, this is pretty useful because it reduces the amount of resources that your server needs to handle. Like you can just send all the data directly to S3 without ever going through your server. So it's much more efficient. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions about anything that I've done here, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching and I will talk to you next time.